Hello and welcome to our preview of Utah State and Texas A&M. I'm your host, Chris Lee at Southeastern 16, joined by Blake Lovell. You can catch this game 11:45 Central on the SEC Network. And Blake, what's FanDuel have in terms of lines, totals, and anything else of interest on this game?
Yep, the Aggies over at FanDuel, all the same game parlays, team props, futures. Have fun, bet responsibly with our friends at FanDuel. The Aggies, 11.5, or not 11.5, 31.5. Calm down, Texas A&M fans. You're more than 11.5-point favorites in this game. I was looking at another number here in terms of pulling up some futures on something for the Aggies, but we'll get to that in just a second because I think there's some interesting stuff there. 31.5-point favorites against Utah State, over under 54.5 for this one. The Aggies coming off of a 42-24 win against UTSA, taking on a Utah State team, 28-16 winners against UTEP. Bronco Mendenhall at the helm for the other Aggies, Chris, in this one. Aggies on Aggies. Here we go.
We just call them red Aggies, blue Aggies.
I think that's probably what we do here because that's the best separator of the group, probably.
Well, I think there's some other separators here. You mentioned the line.
We'll see that. Yeah.
Yeah, my model has got A&M by 31.5. Let's talk briefly about Utah State. Bronco Mendenhall, really good coach. This team was picked 9th of 12th in the Mountain, 9 of 12 in the Mountain West by both Phil Steele and the media. Could be a little better than that. Beat UTEP 28-16 in the opener. Defense gave up just under 4 yards of play. Their quarterback, Bryson Barnes, threw for 233, ran for 21. And Miles Davis, who knew he was a football player? He rushed for 88 yards and caught passes for 61, Blake.
Did you know that Miles Davis currently is 10th in the country in all-purpose yards through the games we have so far? He's number 10 in the country in that. So I did have that in my notes. But he's a dude. He can play. And by the way, he was what was it? He was at 5 seasons at BYU too. So was at BYU for 5 seasons. Now in his 6th year with the Utah State Aggies now.
A&M, Blake, I think a week ago, and we'll say this, every SEC team had something to work on. And I think the Aggies gave up last week 177 yards to Robert Henry on 11.1 per pop, including a 75-yard touchdown run. Shoring up the rush defense was an issue last year. A&M lost some dudes to the NFL in the front seven. So I think that's a concern, although Henry, I think, is a good running back and I think considered an NFL prospect, if I remember that correctly. So no slouch there, but not what you wanted to see if you're A&M. Also, you would have liked to have seen a better rushing attack. 4.7 is a team net of sacks, so throw sacks out of that, it's a little bit higher, but you want to see a little bit more out of Le'Veon Moss, who only carried it 3 times. Maybe he gets a bigger role this week. I mean, of course, he came off that injury last year that really sort of ruined A&M's season. But on the other hand, the questions were about Marcel Reed and his ability to throw. He goes 22 of 34 for 289, 4 touchdowns, no picks. And, hey, that was the question offensively about the Aggies all off season. Could Marcel Reed improve his passing game? Now, look, UTSA's defense is not going to be very good. Wasn't good last year, lost a lot of guys. But he showed up and he did what he needed to do. And, oh, by the way, playmakers and Mario Craver, who goes 8 for $122 and 2 scores, and Casey Concepcion, 3 for 72, a touchdown, and also an 80-yard punt return. So you got a little bit of what you wanted to see. We were promised the Aggies would have more explosiveness offensively. Check that box. Marcel Reed better in the passing game, but defensively, the rushing attack, that's something that's going to have to be shored up.
Well, and I think, as we said, I mean, coaches are always looking at these kind of games, game one. And we remember we talked too. We were like, this is one of those games that the spread was a bit lower than all those other, 5 touchdown plus spreads that we had for some of the games in the SEC in week one. This was, I think, what would it wind up being, like 21 and a half, something like that. So again, it was kind of showing you what you could probably expect out of the opponent in UTSA. But ultimately, as we mentioned, I mean, A&M gets the win, and I think that was one of the things Mike Elko had talked about, was sort of felt like the defense sort of put the foot down a bit, down the stretch, and played better. I think for him, he felt like, based on some of the quotes I saw as well. But like you said, I mean, I think for a lot of people, it was just going to be, Marcel Reed, Marcel Reed, Marcel Reed, and just seeing how, he establishes himself as usual moving forward, based on what we've seen from him thus far at Texas A&M. And I mean, again, like, right, it's just there's not a guy's just got a very unique skill set in terms of the things that he can do and the way they can use him in this offense. And so I think that will, kind of be the story of these first several games, for Texas A&M. And we know obviously the first two, and then it goes into, I think, even more of a story next week whenever, of course, they go to Notre Dame. So I think, yeah, like these are the kind of games here where, it's a 31.5 point spread, a little bit bigger than the one you had last week, but still, I think a respectable opponent in Utah State that, to me, too, if we're looking at it from a matchup standpoint, yes, it's Bronco Mendenhall. We know some success he's had over the years. You mentioned they were picked ninth in the Mountain West. Miles Davis can do some things, I think, in terms of making plays. But I think, one of the things I think it was Phil Still had noted, just not a ton of experience with the guys they brought in to kind of replace some of the guys as well. And so I just think, those are the kind of things that if you're an A&M fan, you want to see A&M come out and just sort of, whether methodically or not, just sort of be able to attack some of those weaknesses. And we just know that they've got the playmaking ability. I mean, we saw that very quickly, right? With Casey Concepcion, we knew that he was going to be someone that could just make game-changing type plays. And obviously, it didn't take long for that to happen. I mean, basically 8 minutes into the game, he had the 80-yard punt return. So, yeah, it's a team filled with I think playmaking ability, and I think it's just like he said, keeping that foot down a bit on the defensive side. I think will be something they're focused on in this matchup.
If there's a nightmare scenario here for A&M, I think it is ball control offense potentially for Utah State. I mean, UTSA held the ball for 33-41 last week. Now, what that still got them in the end was an 18-point loss, but you got a guy in Davis who can catch passes, who was pretty efficient running the ball a week ago. Again, that was something that A&M had problem with. First downs last week for A&M, 17 apiece in that game with UTSA. So I think there's your recipe if you're Utah State for making this more of a game than it should be on paper.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. And we'll see, again, exactly how it plays out from that standpoint. But let's quickly tell you about our friends. I think there's some interesting stats here, too, for a game like this. I always love kind of looking at statistical trends with SEC teams that are big favorites like this against a team like Utah State. But let's quickly tell you about GameTime SIDEKICKS, of course, officially licensed stainless steel drinkware. All the SEC schools are there. Texas A&M fans, get some cups. They look great. Over 350 more universities as well. Stainless steel sippy cups, tumblers, 40-ounce bottles, shaker cups. Texas A&M fans, you're watching this. Utah State fans, you're watching this. SE16 for 20% discount over there at GameTimeSidekicks.com. ROKFORM, you get a discount as well. ROKFORM.com. World's strongest magnetic phone case. Extreme protection, super strong magnets, Rock Lock, secure mounting. They got phone case accessories, golf accessories, all kinds of stuff. 25% off over there for SEC25. SEC25, 25% off at ROKFORM. And our new sponsor, HOVI Dry Goods, your new favorite hat. Look no further than HOVI hats for high-quality headwear with great fit and unique designs. Promo code coming soon with our friends at HOVI Dry Goods. All right, Chris, you ready for a stat here?
Yeah,
make our picks. Utah State has lost 11 straight to the SEC. They are 0-3, I think, in their last 3 against the spread. So that is one of those, like, if you're looking at it from a, oh boy, upset potential, oh boy, like spread potential, those kind of things. These are just numbers, but that's at least one to start off with there. And I do want to throw this one in, too, from FanDuel real quick. Doesn't necessarily tie into our prediction, but I think I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure this number's changed a little bit. But if you're looking at A&M moving forward, regular season win total over 8.5 is now, I think, only at plus 124. So you can go under 8.5 and get minus 166. You're not getting a ton there, but if you want to go over, like, you're still getting a little bit of potential cash there if you want to go over on the Aggies at plus 124 over at FanDuel.
Picks, Blake. I'll start. You mentioned that stat on Utah State. That used to be a pretty respectable program that's kind of fallen on hard times lately. And what did it get? It got a really good coach in the offseason in Bronco Mendenhall, who had, I don't think Virginia's had much success since he left after 2021. BYU, he was consistent 8 to 10 wins every year, got him to a bowl every year. And even in Mexico last year, which is a horrible team this year, he goes 5-7. Looking ahead to next week for A&M, you got a big game against Notre Dame for all the marbles. This just feels to me like A&M is going to win the game, okay? I'm not worried about that, but 31 points or whatever it is feels like a lot given the way Bronco Mendenhall has coached teams, given the way Utah State came out last week, and given that it can, I don't know, maybe A&M's defense shows up and just shuts them down. The talent's too much, but there's enough things that concern me about the spot that I think it might not be quite as easy as the spread would indicate.
I think for all the reasons you mentioned, I could see that because I think the style, potentially for Utah State, could maybe give them a few issues. But I think to me, the thing that stands out with A&M and why I'd probably maybe still be okay with this at the number is what I said earlier. It's just the big play ability. And I feel like that's one where we saw how quickly, some of those big plays can just completely sort of change the game last week, whether it's like I mentioned, an 80-yard punt return, a 31-yard touchdown pass, all the things that Marcel Reed can do on his own, to make big plays potentially. So I think to me that's kind of the thing I'm looking at. And I know, like I said, there's only so much you can take away maybe from game one, but what was it? I mean, I think Texas A&M had 4 plays in the passing game of 20 or more yards. They had, I think Ruben Owens had a 30-yard run. So like you're seeing some of those where if they can just kind of keep that trend going in a game like this, where statistically they are a bigger favorite against Utah State than they were against UTSA. So I think that's one where I just feel like that's the difference, is their ability to make big plays. And I think that group of guys that did it last week, the guys that are probably going to do it again, again, you can add Craver and Moss and like all these guys to the mix. We know we've seen this too many times with this team in the past, that they have a lot of big playability, I feel like, and I think that may be the separator here in this game. So
we'll be here to talk about it when it's over. Just hit the subscribe button and enable notifications so you get that. We talk football, baseball, basketball year-round here at Southeastern 16. God bless you guys. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again soon with more content, including our reaction on this one Saturday when it's done.